Well, the concerns for NIN continue. You may have seen some of them reported in the dailies, and now the government is even reporting that this February 9 deadline, it's even at risk. I mean, bad enough that you talked about that 2 weeks, and everybody thought, how is that going to happen? You saw yesterday we did that Chris Willems was in Lagos, and there were several people who said, look, I've been chasing this for over a year. So if they didn't get it in over a year, could they have done it in 2 weeks? Now, even the February 9 date, now, you know, when they spoke about some of the people, or if you have to make certain corrections, there are certain fees that you have to pay. And it may sound silly, but do we actually think that everyone can afford that money just like that?
Look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Nigerians to pay 25,000 naira
for
correction of date of birth and card replacements. 25,000 naira. The minimum wage is 5,000 naira added to that. So if you want to make all these corrections, just take 1 month's pay, borrow 5,000 naira from next month's pay. Okay, no, okay.
No, yeah,
just
5,000.
1 month pay.
If you got
Just
the
1
conditional
month pay.
cash transfer, it's 5,000 naira for some people.
Oh, really?
Additionally to the 25,000 naira minimum wage.
Okay. If you are
30,
one of the
30,000.
beneficiaries of 774,000 jobs, you have to pay for this month fully, and next month's pay, borrow 5,000 naira to deal with it. That's what we're talking about now. And don't forget that this is just for 1 or 2 items. If you have multiple items, you want to change your name, you want to change your date of birth, you may have to replicate, you know, add to this and this and this. So, I don't know. From what that lady said yesterday, I think there is a lot of need. There is a need for NIMC to come out frontally and educate Nigerians about all of these things. I mean, we have been making efforts, you know.
Or education that they're going to tell you that people want to hear, okay, you don't have to pay 25,000.
Listen, when this whole thing started about the 346 hash, remember people were paying 20 naira. Maybe this outcry or this issues that have been raised will make the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy say, okay, hold that for a while. I don't know, but these things, I think there is a need for government at various levels, the ministries, departments, and agencies, to know how biting it is on the streets.
As if they don't already.
As if they don't know, or they don't already, but let me assume that they don't know, because sometimes when you are cocooned in an office...
You can assume they didn't see the NSAS protest as well. Maybe.
Well, because we can't assume that they don't know that there are
well, these are government people. They have information, much more than many people think.
They have the information that there are gunmen who strut around on the streets of Kaduna or Katsina with an AK-47 around their shoulders and they go to the markets?
You think government don't know about that open secret?
So government is aware that there are gunmen on the streets.
You think government officials, state government officials don't know that? Well, yeah, I might need to wake you up or pinch you just a little bit to wake you up.
I'm just surprised. So if we knew that this was happening, so why are we pretending like we don't know that we are actually encouraging insecurity?
Well, wake up. This is Nigeria. You know, certain things happen. That,
it is not the normal Nigeria many people, even many of the people who are in government today grew up in. Well, they weren't seeing guns. The first time they saw security officers, they saw them with kondo.
But the same person who told us about gunmen, I mean, would those guns on their shoulders told us government knows about it. So what else do we want to hear? Well, speaking about which, it's just like, you know, when they say if you go and leave sometimes, you come back and you look at the issues, it appears as though, have I not reviewed this paper before?
Many months ago.
I thought I read those papers before I went on leave or something, but the issues are almost the same. And speaking about which, Loco's back from Abuja. Drum rolling now. There you go. There you go. Good to see you, Mark. It was just
it's great to be back, Chamberlain.
Yeah.
It's great to be back. Good to see you, Ayo, as well. Wow, same issues, same issues. It does feel like we reviewed the papers before. I mean, look at that one about government saying they're going to clamp down on VIPs who don't obey. I'm like, we did this just before I went on leave. That was what was happening during the immediate easing of the lockdown. That's what government said. Now they're saying the same thing again. Oh my! And then look at the mess with NIMC. What is going on? I mean, these are things that we should envisage, that people have not finished registering. I mean, we're still trying to get Nigerians to get their NINs, and then we now bring up this policy that you're supposed to link your NIN with your phone, and within a very short period at that, then you now have this, if you missed your date of birth or you don't know it or you have to correct it and get a new ID card, 25,000 naira.
Whoa.
Some things never change. The more they change, the more they remain the same. But I think we can take comfort in this one. The fact that, you know, it's not only in our country that we don't recognize what is going on. I mean, even in the great US of A, I'm sure a lot of Americans woke up and they're like, what? What happened to our country as well? Where is the America that we know? So maybe that should be some comfort to us, that it's not only in Nigeria that things are changing in a way that people don't understand. You know, I don't know if it's any comfort, though, but it shouldn't be that things are getting worse. It should be that we wake up, and when they change, they should change for the better.
And, you know, I think that some of the key words there, the world is changing. And people need to pay attention. We may think that it's just a little thing here and there, but we've seen several, almost series of activities to let everyone know times have changed.
And people change. The response is people's expectations are changing. People's expectations are evolving. It's sad to know that you go out of a particular normalcy. You go out of a particular environment, a particular, you know, thing that you wake up to every day, and you come back, and as Malcolm said, I thought we'd have an improvement, only for you to find yourself taking on the same issues you took on 6 months ago. It was a rude shock for me, Chamberlain, when I returned to Breakfast Show, only to find out that the issues that I was discussing in 2000, 2002, 2006 were the same issues. Same set of people, well, different set of people, exact same issues. So is this a problem of systems or people? I'm still at a loss.
Now you can understand why certain people will be frustrated. That ever since I was born, these are the kind of things I've seen. Why can't these things change? You know, they normally tease Nigeria and say, no, if you push Nigeria to the wall, he will break the wall and go to the wall.
And keep going.
But now,
very sad.
Times have changed.
Well, one change that we definitely want to see, Chamberlain, and I think that's where we're going next, is to see a change in the figures of people catching COVID-19. And let those figures... Okay, no. I don't want to see drastic changes. Maybe that's what I want to see now. I don't want to see two extremely drastic changes of what's happening in COVID-19. For God's sake, we already have more than 90,000 people, you know, who have contracted this thing by records. The things that we're asking now is, okay, where do we go from here? We are hearing stories that it's a completely different strain, more dangerous strain of COVID-19. So where are we going from here? Yeah. What are the hopes that people will have? People are not still embracing the COVID-19 protocols of the PTF COVID-19 of the officials. So what else are we missing? Yeah. Chamberlain, we have a lot of work to do.
Okay, well, to shed some light on some of these, we've got Professor Rosemary Aldu. She's a virologist, director of research and head of microbiology department, the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research in Yaba, Lagos. And then she joins us via Zoom, as you can see there. We also do have Dr. Simon Agwale, who is a virologist and a vaccinologist, is the chair, Africa COVID-19 Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, also chair, Vaccine Production Subgroup, ECOWAS, WAHO Expert Committee on Access and Local Production of COVID-19 and Other Vaccines in West Africa, who joins us from Maryland in the US. So, good morning. Thank you both for joining us today. Well, still concerns about where are we with COVID, so many questions about this particular strain mutating faster, a lot more dangerous. We should go ahead with the vaccine. But let's start on the home front. You know, when they say charity begins at home. We'll start with you, Prof. About research, what we know about the vaccine, whether or not we should proceed with it, how should we be handling ourselves as a country concerning COVID and the vaccines. What are your immediate thoughts?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. Vaccines generally are very good because they are safe and effective ways of protecting individuals from getting infected, getting diseases. You know, the vaccinal germs that cause this disease, they are either weakened or killed and introduced into an individual, and the body system is able to develop immunity, antibodies, okay, that will prevent the actual disease when it gets in contact with the germ in future. So it's a very good way to go. We have been using vaccines in Nigeria and all over the world. There are about 19 to 20 vaccines right now, and it's really been very helpful. And that is still the way to go. Now, we'll get vaccines for COVID-19. For this pandemic, I think that is the way to go. However, in Nigeria, if we have vaccines today, we know that it's not possible that everybody gets vaccinated all at the same time. So we have to prioritize it. Some people have to, those who are more at risk will necessarily have to get vaccinated before the others. And for us to know those who are at risk is a product of research. We'll have to check the community, the populace, to know those who have already developed antibodies. Currently, we know that there is community transmission going on. As you also are aware, we have the second wave with us right now. So many people are getting infected. There are many more people that are infected that we have the figures because they are asymptomatic. They don't have symptoms, but they have been infected. Some have developed antibodies already. So for us to determine who are those to get these vaccines, we necessarily need to do some more testing, serology testing, so that we will know those who are at risk. But there's a group of people that all of us know are at risk right now. The health workers have to be at work to attend to those who are exposed on a daily basis. So if we have vaccines coming into Nigeria right now, what I'll suggest is probably we start with the health workers. And then from the product of research and studies, we can tell those who are more at risk. You know, even this pandemic in Nigeria, if you look at the figures, there are some states that are even more hit than others, okay? And for those ones, it means people have been infected, probably also many, and it's possible that we probably would have reached a herd immunity. When I'm talking about herd immunity, the herd immunity here is referring to the population immunity, that the populace has developed immunity, antibodies to fight infection. These can be from vaccination or from having been infected. We know the vaccines for COVID-19 is not yet available. So if we're talking about herd immunity, we're talking about people having been infected naturally and have developed antibodies. And for as long as they have developed antibodies in these communities where we have very high figures of those infected, we will discover that we will need to know what percentage. Do we have so many people having been infected? If many have been infected, say above 70%, then we'll say that these people already have herd immunity. And those who have not been infected, who are not immune, the risk of getting infected will be much lower for those people. So it will be good that we determine the risk groups, those who have higher risk of infection, and that can come from research, because this virus is new and there are many things about it that we are still studying and still trying to find out. You know that most of the vaccines that are even provided, there are different groups of people. There are those that you necessarily need to get before you travel. I believe like COVID might just be one of them, but the COVID vaccines. You may also be thinking about travelers, health workers, travelers. And
all right,
then
Prof.
also, yes,
Not just hang on, Prof. We'll continue in a bit. I just need to find out from Mr. Gwale. Mr. Gwale, is this something is this consideration something that you're taking on board? How should we be approaching this as well if we're going to come up with those vaccines, because the country is saying we're going to be receiving these vaccines soon?
Well, it is true. Through the COVAX initiative, which is an initiative of WHO and Gavi, the arrangement is that they will supply Africa with 20% of their vaccine needs. So what that means is that Nigeria, for example, will be supplied with vaccines that will cover 20% of the population. The question is not, this is theory. In practice, how many vaccines have been approved? So if you look at the 7 vaccines that have received emergency use authorization, it's only Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, which is a mRNA-based vaccine that has been approved by WHO. Again, up to 3 billion doses of the vaccines have been bought already. So where are you going to get the vaccine from? Now, the second one, which is Moderna, is only approved in 2 countries, which is the US and Canada. And then you have AstraZeneca and so on. But the key issue is, of course, under the the COVAX initiative, from the information that we have, the first quarter of 2021, this year, Nigeria will get about 100,000 doses of the vaccines. And it's a 2-dose vaccine, so it means that only 50,000 people will be vaccinated. So again, if you look at the storage condition, this vaccine has to be stored within minus 70 degrees centigrade, which is ultra cold storage. And then if you store it at that temperature, the shelf life is just 60 months. And then if you transport it in dry ice, or you keep it in a regular fridge, the shelf life is only 1 week. Even here in the US, it's a problem. There's a state that they had issues with their freezers, and they had to immediately get a lot of people vaccinated so that they don't waste the vaccines. So these are the things that we have to take into consideration. And
Okay.
that is why...
Before you stretch that a little further, the suggestion by Professor Audu, where she talked about us being cautious in the procurement of the vaccines, because if people have herd immunity, if we're already dealing with it, aren't we going to upset the entire system if we just approach that vaccine head on and then begin to administer them immediately?
Well, my good friend, Dr. Audu, the truth of the matter is that even in Europe, in Spain and Italy, if you look at the first wave, a lot of people were infected. And then if you do antibody testing in those populations, you find out that only about 4 to 8% of the population has antibody to to SARS-CoV-2. So it's not easy to achieve herd immunity. as far as this is concerned. This is why research is very important. I'm excited to hear from her that they are embarking on research to look at exposure to SARS-CoV-2 in Nigeria. Again, in New York, for example, where you had this big this thing, the exposure is not up to 10%. I mean, if this is an area where a lot of research is going on. So it's not easy to achieve natural, herd immunity from natural infection. So vaccines are critical to increase that. I mean, if eventually you find out that 10% of the population in Nigeria already has antibody to SARS-CoV-2, it means that you probably need to vaccinate 60% of the population to achieve that herd immunity. But I mean, this is science. You have to do it. You have to do the research, you know. So we need to invest in that to really capture the number of people that have that antibodies in Nigeria, and then vaccination program can be designed.
All right, Dr. Agwale, just pardon me, just give us a moment. We'll be back and then talk about theories applicable to practice, and then the how component of this all in just a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Well, Professor Aldo, could you first shed some light on what herd immunity is? So, and then how do we then determine which percentage to vaccinate? Because those are some of the concerns I think that Dr. Agwale was talking about.
Thank you very much. So the herd immunity we're talking about is a population immunity. When in a population we have when we have people who have either been vaccinated or infected with a disease, and they have developed some immunity antibodies to that disease, such that when they're exposed to this germ in future, their bodies will be able to fight it. So when we talk about having developed immunity, the herd immunity is an indirect protection for those who have not been immune. Some people have not been immune, or they haven't been infected, they have not been vaccinated, and they cannot be vaccinated either because they have serious illness, health conditions, or because of their age or because of allergy. Such people may not be vaccinated even if the vaccines are here. So if we have herd immunity, which can come from natural infection or vaccination, either of these two can provide herd immunity. Those people who have not been immune, the risk of infecting them infection will be lower, because those who are immune, they are protected, and the risk of transmission of this germ will also be reduced. So it's an indirect way of protecting those who have not been immune. So what I am saying, I'm not saying, I want you to get me right. I'm not saying that these vaccines are not important, they are not necessary. But just like from what he has said, 20% of the population, who are these 20% going to be? How would you determine the 20%? It has to be evidence-based. It has to be product of research. But there is a group that already we know they are at risk. They are at risk because they are exposed every day to this, to people who are ill and probably infected with COVID, the health workers. And then also for travelers, it might just be necessary, like the yellow fever vaccine that is required for traveling. So that might just be necessary. Then for the rest of the population, who gets it? We necessarily have to find those who are more at risk, where they probably have not been immune. The population is at risk. So if it gets in there, it's going to be more devastating. That's just what we need to do. So what I'm suggesting is that we do more of this testing. We do more of this testing. Dr. Agwale is a friend of mine, and I'm glad you have told us the picture in the US, whereby the antibody level, even amongst those who have been infected, is low. that is true. But you know that this virus seems to be behaving differently in these different populations. So we necessarily have to check in our own community how many people have been infected. We have more asymptomatic cases than they have. They have more severe cases. So we have many people who have been infected, and from what has been shown, even the youth corpers, so many people have been infected. And so we want to know, where is the place that is most at risk? Who are the people that are most at risk?
Again,
and
hello.
then the vaccine for them.
Okay,
That's
all right,
I'm
well,
saying.
yeah. That's noted. There is another issue, Prof. Just one moment.
Priority.
Yeah, there's another issue that you raised earlier, and I think I want to ask Dr. Agwale that one. And it's a question that came to my mind because I'm wondering what the efficacy of this vaccines will be, given that the production of these vaccines came from the first wave. Now, this is the second wave. And as you all have told us, the second wave, this virus has mutated, is behaving differently, and from some other reports, is more lethal. So how effective will this vaccine that is gone out now, how effective will it be against this virus, this wave of the virus that we're having now, given that, as you have said, it has mutated? And if it mutates again, where are we?
That is an excellent question. Now, this vaccine is, basically, like you said, based on the virus that was responsible for the first wave. Now, for us to even get this vaccine in Africa, it's going to take us a while, And then now you have mutant viruses that are also responsible, especially in the UK, where the mutant strain is responsible for 70% of the infection. Now in Nigeria, because we don't have much research going on, we don't even know what is responsible for this second wave in Nigeria. Because based on the literature that is before us, the last genetic study was done sometime around August and September. And even at that time, we already had a mutant strain. So we don't even know what is responsible for this second wave. So that study has to be done. Now, if you come to vaccine, there are studies going on now, and I think in the next 1 month or 6 weeks, we will know whether these current vaccines will protect against these variants that are responsible for this second wave. And if eventually we'll find out that these particular vaccines will not protect against those mutant strains, then we'll have a problem. Because the first wave already, we don't even know when we will vaccinate 70% to 90% of our population with the first vaccine, first generation vaccines. Now, if we have this mutant strain that will not respond to these vaccines, then you have to make another vaccine to prevent against the mutant strain. So now we're talking about access to these vaccines. So the making of the vaccine is not a big deal. If you have a mutant strain, now you don't even need the virus to make a vaccine. You get the sequence, you synthesize, you can incorporate it into what is existing. And then you have a new vaccine that will protect against the mutant strain. But the problem is, how do you produce it? So the focus of our organization, the African Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, is to make sure that we have vaccine manufacturing capabilities throughout Africa. Except that is done, then we are going to be in trouble, because if you incorporate that, it's easy here, you incorporate into these existing vaccines, you can get Americans or the West vaccinated. But how will you have access to that? Making the vaccine is not a problem. Manufacturing it is the issue. How are you going to manufacture the vaccine? Manufacturing vaccines is not a trivial issue. Even the Pfizer, this in the US, they have only about 50 million doses of the vaccine, which is enough for 25% of the population. of the US. So it's not easy to make this vaccine. So we should focus on making sure that the vaccine manufacturing capabilities are built in Africa so that if we have a mutant strain, it will be very easy to incorporate it, make the vaccines, produce it, and then start vaccinating the population.
All right, Markwe has got some questions as well. Go ahead, Markwe.
That largely covered the first question I was going to ask. But the second is this question of immunity. Even after people have been infected, we've been told that the immunity or the antibodies they have in them doesn't last for too long. We have maybe 2 to a month from research and from what we have seen so far. They say that you can get reinfected. There's been no research whatsoever on how long the vaccinations or the vaccines are going to last in anyone, or how much cover they provide and for how long. Do you have questions with regards to that?
I think that is a very good question as well. We don't even know the duration of protection. The good thing is that the people that participated in the clinical trials of these vaccines are going to be monitored for 2 years, so that we'll know the duration of protection. Now, for example, Pfizer clinical trial started in May, and then interim analysis was done. So those people still had immune response that will protect after 5 months. So we know we have data for up to 5 months. And then these people will continue to be followed for 2 years. Until these studies are completed, we cannot categorically say that these vaccines will protect for X number of years. And that is one other area that is of concern to vaccine developers. Because if it becomes a situation like the flu, where you have mutant strains and then you have to make vaccines every year, then it becomes more complicated, because the entire vaccine manufacturing facility of the world is now focused on making COVID-19 vaccines. Now the production of other vaccines are suffering. That is why we are having issues with our childhood vaccination in Africa, because those factories that are making vaccines for these children have been converted into making COVID-19 vaccines. So this is an issue that we need to address as a nation, and then see how we can begin to build. That's the focus of this task force. The responsibility that we have is to make sure that we have this vaccine. And until that is done, we will continue to be talking for until the kingdom come.
So considering all the uncertainties around vaccine, immunity coverage and things of the sort, do you think that it really makes sense for us to be in a rush to be obtaining the vaccines?
It's very important. The key issue is that where will you even find the vaccines? That's the issue. It's not whether we're in a rush or not in a rush. Only one vaccine has been approved by WHO, which is the Pfizer BioNTech. This particular vaccine, up to 3 billion doses have been paid for already. Where are you going to get the vaccine from? So what WHO and Gavi is trying to do is to make sure that there is equitable distribution of vaccines. And that's why, based on what he have been able to arrange, this thing will have to go throughout Africa. And that's why Nigeria is getting only 100,000 doses of the vaccine in the first quarter. And then if you look at the press release, we are targeting to vaccinate 42 million people, which is just like the 20% of what COVAX has promised to give Africa. And that is dependent on the other vaccines that will be approved, not Pfizer or Moderna. Moderna have already told Africa that we don't have vaccines for you. Now, if you look at the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, the efficacy is about 62%. In the small population, the efficacy was up to 90%. So they are doing another trial using the dose that they used to get the 90%. And that is going to take time. The GSK Sanofi vaccine that we were banking on to increase the number of vaccines, doses of vaccines that will be used in Africa, they had issues with their phase 3 trials because they found out that the dose that they were using was not efficacious in people 50 years and above. So they have to repeat the trial. So we're looking at third or fourth quarter of next year. So where are we going to get the vaccine from? If you look at the Sinopharm, which is the Chinese vaccine, which is based on inactivated technology. Of course, inactivated vaccine has been used in making polio vaccine and so on. The efficacy is about 79%. The population of China is 1.2 billion people. The president has made it clear that we have to finish vaccinating our people before we start sending the vaccines out. So where are we going to get the vaccines from? So we have to look inward. This is theory to say we're going to vaccinate X number of people. The real question is, where are you going to get the vaccine from? Even if you have all the money, all the resources, where are you going to get the vaccine from?
The question also is, I mean, with all the uncertainties around it, even if you do get the vaccine, is it going to be worth it when there are still so many uncertainties around the vaccines that are being produced as we speak?
Well, we don't have those answers. So we work with what is going on now. We get the people vaccinated. The thing about vaccination is that you will never have all the answers at once. So you vaccinate people, you don't know whether there's going to be cross protection. You don't even know whether this vaccine will protect against the mutant strain. So these studies are going on. So that should, if you want to wait to get all the answers, then you will never implement your program. So we go ahead with what we have, get people vaccinated, millions of people will be protected. Like Dr. Audu said, we know that the health workers, I mean, you read every day, X number of doctors died from COVID. And so you get those people protected. So you protect them and you protect the patients that they are seeing. So the initial 100,000 doses of the vaccine should go to that population. Here in the US, that is what they are doing. They vaccinate the healthcare workers and then the elderly people, because these are the people that are at risk of dying from COVID. So they are vaccinating the elderly people, and then you now vaccinate people with comorbidities. These are the people that are dying from the COVID infection. So it has to be strategic. You have to come up with a strategy where you protect people that are at most because you don't have enough doses. Even here, they are considering reducing the doses of the vaccine so that more people will be vaccinated. So that's why I'm more concerned about access to the vaccine. In theory, we can say we want to vaccinate 70 million Nigerians, but where would the vaccines come from? Even here, they are considering reducing the doses of the Pfizer vaccines to so that more people will be vaccinated. In the UK, they have delayed second dose of the vaccine because you are supposed to take the second dose, I think 28 days after the first dose. Now they are considering delaying it for several months so that more people will be vaccinated. So the key question should be, where are we going to get these vaccines from?
But also considering, this is for Professor Audu now, I'm sorry, yeah, Dr. Audu, considering vaccine hesitancy and all the conspiracy theories we're hearing around this, isn't it important to answer some of the questions that people have about these vaccines before we, well, maybe as well as trying to get the vaccines at the same time?
All right, thank you very much. Just like he has said, we cannot answer all the questions before we get these vaccines. If indeed vaccines are coming into the country this January or this first quarter, I think we should just go ahead to give the health workers. They are at risk. They are at risk. And every day they are getting infected. Some are dying. So for me, I just believe that if these vaccines are coming, let's give to those who are at risk. And the studies will continue. We are conducting some studies. We may not be doing it in a large scale as they are doing in the developed world, but I know we are also characterizing this virus. Every day we have groups that are working at least we do have sequencers, Dr. Agwale, you may want to know that now, okay? So we are doing this thing. Like now, for instance, the mutant strains that is being reported to even be more virulent was also found in Nigeria in August and in October. The issue is that we are still sequencing samples. The issue is that we haven't found more of these virulent strains. And so it's possible that it may not be the one driving the second wave in Nigeria. However, we are working as I'm speaking. People are still in the lab, they are sequencing. The sequencing in SG, they are sequencing in NIMC also. So work is still going on. And so we cannot answer all the questions. Some of these questions, it will take time. And we would not want to just let people die unnecessarily if there are vaccines that can protect them, because we want to answer the questions, especially the health workers. If we lose, these health workers takes time to develop.
Let's give us a moment, skills. Prof. We'll still come back to some of these matters, but as a matter of fact, still speaking about COVID, there's a situation with NIMC where people are supposed to go ahead and get their registration numbers, the NIN. But we've got our correspondent, Chris Lems, who is in the Lagos office to give us an update on what is going on there now. Good morning, Chris. What's happening at the moment?
Chamberlain, good morning. This place, it's not really palatable what is happening right now. A lot of people have been here as early as possible to see if they could get registered, only for them to just been told that they can't undergo the registration process today because the members of NIMC are on strike. They just informed them now, and a couple of them have decided to go to the governor's office to probably register their displeasure. We heard that a lot of people slept over last night to see if they could actually register this morning. You know, in the case of this spiraling number of COVID-19 figure in the country, this is not good. There are a lot of people all around. They're milling around, no social distancing, even though, you have a lot of them on face mask, but there's no social distancing. And right now, they are even frustrated that, after standing here for hours, they are just being told that there will be no registration today. Now, we hear that the staff of NIMC are really aggrieved with their welfare package, that they are not even being given extra payment for this exercise, and they need this, which is why they've decided to go on strike. But right now, I have with me Prince Ayola, a retiree, who said he came in here as early as 4 a.m. and yet he's not been able to do anything. This is not his first time. He's been coming here over and over again. He would want to share his experience with us. Just quickly, good morning, sir. Share your experience with us.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I want to confirm to you that I've been coming here every morning since last Friday, 4:30 in the morning. And when we come here, we're always on queue here. Sometimes we are given number. By the time you come the following morning, the number becomes void. You have to queue to take another number. Today I got here about 5 minutes after 4, and it's supposed to be a lucky day. Only for some people or staff to come, they distributed this and said they are on strike, we should all go home. This is pitiful, really, because what we had is the phone numbers are going to be blocked. But we feel since you have your BVN, all your data and everything is on the BVN, you should automatically have your ID card, your national identity card. But really, it's not a happy ending here today. It's not. Because a lot of pregnant women, a lot of women with children, elderlies like me, it's not a very good sight. It's not a good sight. I think there should be some more order to this thing. people should have some more privileges. We've served this country, and people who are the youth should be given opportunities to aspire, to look up to heroes. And this is not the way it's supposed to be. I'm not happy about this. This is not kind of things we should be given. It's not good. It's not good.
Well, the truth is, it is actually what plays out here. Generally, everyone seems frustrated. They're not happy with what is happening at this moment. And the NIMC staff, one of them that I spoke to, also talked about the issue of safety measures, that they've not been taken care of adequately in that regards, and that they are not safe because they interact with people on a daily basis, and yet there's nothing put in place for their safety. I would want to take one more reaction, then I'll come back to you. Quickly share with us your own experience today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm one of the pensioners too. The situation I met today, I came as early as the elderly man I've just said, almost after him. And the way I met this place, it was so shambles, not well organized. Talking of COVID and what arrangement of the NIMC, what have they make to cover up the COVID issues? They are not well organized. Old ones, pregnant women, and other people, they are all assembled in a place, which is totally against COVID. Then those people that are not even old and all when you come early, it should be first come, first serve. Are they orderly? They are not on queue. Somebody's supposed to be organizing all those queues. Apart from organizing all those queues, as you are coming, you get your number. And if at all they cannot attend to everybody, you should limit your number to where you will stop. But that all those ones are not there, which is not talking good of the organizers. That's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Okay, Chamberlain, Ayo would still remain here for a while because a lot of people are still milling around. They don't want to believe that today there will be no registration because time is of the essence. If January 19th is a date or the deadline, if January 19th is the deadline, that means they're just about 2 weeks away from being disconnected. And that is the reason why a lot of people are standing by, hoping that it's not true, hoping that they would still get their NIN registration today. I will return to you, and hopefully, if you still have time, you join us again.
Well, very well indeed, Chris. We will have that time and get that update for the people out there because, I mean, anybody will be heartbroken having left home or slept there only to wake up this morning and get to hear that you cannot do any registration whatsoever because the people are on strike. Because some of the members, they say, are contracted COVID. No protection. They wanted some allowances put in place there. So it's not looking good.
What part of this report that Chris has given that's touched me the most is that the people are moving from there to the governor's office. Now, that is a start. We don't want it to escalate any further than that. Register their presence or their displeasure and get something doing about it. So far, all efforts to get officers of the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy or NIMC to come to the studio to have conversations with us, well, maybe after this conversation, maybe they will be willing to have this sit down with us so that we can really understand what's going on and then people can be better educated because you tell people, government tells people in one space to observe all COVID-19, rules. Do not go out if you don't need to. Now people need to go out. There is a booking system in place, and then there is a strike. So it's a conundrum. So people just need to know what to do so that they can be safe and confident that their lives will not stop or pause simply because they don't have a name, that they do not have power.
Well, at the moment, Mr. Sanwo-Olu, they're headed your way. So maybe your officials may just be there to tell them a thing or two. I mean, they need a lot of soothing words right now because it's harrowing, not pleasant for lots of them. I will keep an eye on that matter. You need to keep it locked here as well as we get you all of this information as we get them. But Professor Aldu, let me get back to you because you were trying to make a point before we went to notion or impression that some Nigerians may have contracted COVID and recovered without knowing. Now, some school of thought believe that maybe it could be that those categories of Nigerians may have some neutralizing antibodies. Now, if we don't conduct a seroprevalence test, probably in densely populated areas, to determine Nigerians who may be in that category, as well as determining who to vaccinate, what are we going to be walking into? Because it appears they've already earmarked some 42 million people who will be vaccinated already.
Okay, thank you very much. So, like I said, yes, some people have been infected. They have developed antibodies, and we need to know them. Then the next step again is this, because there's still a lot we need to know about this virus. Those who have been those who have developed antibodies, how is this antibody even protective? Is it so we necessarily need to do neutralization tests to do that, to get that information in Nigeria? And then also, for how long? I think Dr. Simon Agwale has mentioned that. In fact, there are some studies that have said, okay, that it could be as long as 8 months. But whatever it is, we have to sit down and consider some of these things to understand this virus before we can go all out. However, there are still people who are at risk that we shouldn't wait any longer. If we have these vaccines, go ahead and vaccinate them so that what is happening at NIMC now will not happen. If health workers down tools, what will happen? Because they are at risk and they need to be protected. This, the PPEs that they are supposed to use, the protective equipment, is not readily available. You know that. Sometimes in some places, they will even ask patients to go buy these things, buy hand gloves and buy all of those things. So they are really at risk. And so if we have these vaccines, I am saying let's vaccinate health workers first.
There was something you mentioned earlier, if you do not mind me going back there, when you were talking about herd immunity. What is suggested to me is that there are some things that help some people to gain that herd immunity. But perhaps you want to look at it from this different angle. At the beginning of all this conversation about whether or not we would get a vaccine on time, we asked the Director General of Nigeria's NAFDAC to tell us if there were low-hanging fruits that people could use. A good number of people have suggested that people should find ways to consume immune-boosting, nutrition and stuff like that. And then when we asked her that question, she was talking about herbs and all of that as low-hanging fruits that we can revert to. NIMR was also said to be looking at some of these, herbs and stuff like that. Could these things in any way have contributed to why we have such low mortality figures in Nigeria? Is there any hope at all in looking in that direction? Because a good number of people say those who contracted it, they just boosted their immunity and then they got out of it. Is there any hope in it?
All right, thank you so much. Boosting immunity is different from herd immunity. So let me go ahead and explain to you. The body system, once it comes in contact with a germ, a microorganism, infectious microorganism, it fights it back. Depending on the capacity of the immune system, the strength of the immune system, the body soldiers, if it's strong enough, the person will recover and not, have serious illness. But when we're talking about that is just natural. If we have many people in the population who have come down with this infection and they have overcome it and have antibodies, then you will expect that population, those who have not been infected, the risk of infection will be less. It will be lower because the risk of transmission also would have reduced. Most people now have antibodies, so most likely they are not going to transmit this virus. And so those who have not been immunized, who have not been infected, the chances of them getting infected will be lower. It's different from taking immune boosters. Immune boosters could strengthen the immune system. That is another research that we will need to, the dose and all of that might just be a little challenging, but that's another kettle of fish. What I'm saying is this. It is possible because of the trend, the pattern we have seen in Nigeria, that many people have been infected. We need to test. We need to test more people so that we will know where to prioritize, whom to vaccinate. But without much ado, you know that the health workers are at risk. So you can take any immune booster, anything you want to protect. It's when the infection comes that we'll know whether you do well, you thrive on it. But I know also that this virus, from studies, is like coronavirus, not necessarily the COVID-19 strain now, but coronavirus has been in our own environment before now, and we have been living with it. But in the Western world, where they have flu and all of that, they have to go extra miles to take vaccines and what have you to protect themselves. We have done well with it. And so if we are seeing the pattern we are seeing now, it's not too strange that not too many people are coming down with this infection, with severe disease like in the Western world. But whatever the case is, it looks like this virus behaves a little differently in different population. And so in our own population, it's good we answer some more questions. Does not mean that we should not vaccinate those who need it.
Well, Dr. Agwale, let me ask you. People have looked at the case fatality rates in Western world and Black-dominated population, and they see the difference. So some suggest that rather than talk about mass vaccination, I know you're concerned about where we're going to get it from before we talk about vaccination. But the thing is, just like Oxford AstraZeneca, it's undergoing clinical trial in India as Covishield. So here, should we subject those vaccines to clinical trials here before we proceed in the Black-dominated population, for instance?
That's also a very good question. The truth of the matter is that it all depends on the vaccine platform. As you know, all the vaccines that are being used in Nigeria now were never tested in Nigeria, and they are working. So for the Pfizer vaccine, which is mRNA vaccine, we work in all populations. The problem with the AstraZeneca vaccine and other vaccines like the Russian Sputnik vaccine, AstraZeneca, the Oxford University, they were wise to use, because these are called vector-based vaccines, they were wise to use chimpanzee adenovirus to deliver the spike protein. Now, the spike protein of coronavirus is what binds to the host cell, which is the receptor, and then it enters the cell. Now, vaccines are supposed to make antibodies to prevent that binding of the spike protein, and the assay SPIKE2 receptor to enter the cell. So now you know what works. How can you deliver it? So all these vaccine platforms are about delivering. So the vector-based vaccine is using another virus. In the case of the AstraZeneca Oxford, is the chimpanzee adenovirus. Because if you use a human adenovirus, there is a tendency that the population already have pre-existing immunity, which will affect the effectiveness of the vaccine. So they use chimpanzee adenovirus to deliver the spike protein so that you make antibody to the spike protein to prevent that binding from the spike and the host receptor. So for mRNA, there's no point doing any local clinical trials. For AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine as well, there's no point doing any clinical trial because the delivery vehicle is chimpanzee based, which theoretically we don't have pre-existing immunity to that particular protein to hinder its effectiveness. But when you come to the Russian vaccine, they use the human adenovirus to do that. So with that, there are two ways that we can do it. It's either to look at the population of Nigeria, whether we have antibodies to that particular adenovirus, or to do a limited, which we call bridging clinical trials in Nigeria, maybe 200 people, vaccinate them and see whether they make antibodies to the spike protein. The next vaccines that will be coming are going to be based on protein-based vaccines. And these are vaccines that we have been using for decades in Nigeria. So you don't need clinical trials. So clinical trials or bridging studies in Nigeria would be dependent on the platform of the vaccine. So introduction of vaccines has to be done carefully. Pfizer, BioNTech, straight, we don't need clinical trials. It works in all population. Here in the US, when you are doing clinical trials, you look at the various races and the various age groups and so on. And then that vaccine was also tried in South Africa, which is a typical representation of the population of Africa. So I don't think that is necessary.
All right, Doctor. Let's get back to our correspondent, Chris Lambs, who is on ground at the NIMC office. He's in Alausa area at the moment. Okay, we understand he's not ready, but we'll get back to that in a moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, but Dr. Agwale, there's something you kept using, the term pre-existing immunity. And then Professor Audu has also consistently talked about herd immunity. I'm wondering if there is some marriage among these two somewhere, given the number of testings that we conduct, the number of active cases that we get, the speed at which people recover. Sometimes people are reinfected. So please give me some perspective about the pre-existing immunity you talked about, and if there is any relationship between that and the what Professor Audu talked about, which is about herd immunity.
There's no relationship. Pre-existing immunity means, like I said, we know what works. If you make vaccines and use the spike protein of the virus, because it's the antibodies or the cellular immune response to the spike protein that protects you against infection. So all the platform that we're talking about here is about delivering that spike protein. So the AstraZeneca vaccine uses another virus, which is called the adenovirus. We have human adenoviruses.
Yes, you explained all of that earlier, and it's appreciated. Yeah. But there was something that you both also mentioned earlier, and which is the fact that I think it was you who actually mentioned the fact that a particular country is delaying the second dose because a more number of people need to take the first dose. I thought that there was a timing to the need to take the first dose, the second dose after the first dose within a particular time. Otherwise, wouldn't the efficacy of the first dose be neutralized if you don't take the second dose on time?
Yes. When you are doing clinical trials, when you do clinical trials, the implementation of the vaccine will be based on the clinical trials results. So based on the clinical trial that was done, for example, the Pfizer vaccine, if you give the first dose, let's say day 0, then you give a booster dose, let's say 28 days after. So that's the protocol that you have to achieve the results that you have. So you can't change it. But what UK, is looking at is to look at the data, to say that, oh no, maybe if we give the first dose, we can delay the second dose for about 2 months, 3 months, and then we still get the same results. The whole idea is about the vaccines, the quantity of the vaccines that they have, which is not going to be enough. So it's a strategy to see how they can vaccinate more people. It has nothing to do with pre-existing immunity or herd immunity. It's how we can, because of the limited doses or quantity of the vaccines that they have. So they have to think about strategy. Here in the US, they are looking critically about on the dosage. Say, okay, if we use half dose, we probably will get the same result as using the dose that was used in the clinical trials. So it's all about the doses of the vaccines that we have, and then how can we simplify the method to have more people vaccinated. So all that we have to be based on science and looking at the clinical trials in details. This decision is not just taken like that. You have to look at the clinical trials after the first dose. How long did it take for the antibodies to last before the booster dose, which is the second dose, and so on. So it's all about the quantity of the, or the doses of the vaccines available, not about pre-existing immunity or herd immunity.
So if I may just explain.
Yes, go ahead, Prof.
Pre-existing and the herd immunity. I really want us to get this right. The pre-existing immunity is immunity that an individual has prior to exposure to a germ. Are we together? He already has it. So he already has the immunity before this germ is being introduced. But what herd immunity is a population-based immunity in such that if in a population, say 90% of the people there have developed immunity. They have had this infection, whether direct infection or through vaccines, and they have developed immunity. The 10% that haven't been infected before are protected because the chances of transmission of this germ would have reduced. And then the risk that these ones are exposed to is also lower. So we're talking about the risk of infection to those who have not been immune. So we're talking about herd immunity. Is a population, in this population, many people have gotten this infection. And so those who have not been infected, the chances of them getting infected is lower, is reduced. So that's just the difference. So this one is population-based. When we're talking about pre-existing immunity, it's talking about immunity that an individual has. The body has already come in contact with this germ before now and has developed the body soldiers, the defense, such that anytime this organism comes again, is able to fight it. That's what we mean by pre-existing. Thank you.
All right, then, Professor Rosemary Algie, as well as Dr. Simon Agwale, thank you both for talking to us today.
It's a pleasure.
All right, let's get back to our correspondent, Chris Lems. He's got some updates for us about what is going on with NIMC members of staff who we understand are on strike at the moment. Chris, what's next?
Well, it's official that nothing would be done today. People are already disenchanted and they have left. Unlike yesterday, at this time yesterday, there were a lot of people jostling to get in. But right now, you just still find a few still milling around. But the officials are not willing to talk because I learned they might be having a meeting later in the day to really address some of their concerns, some of their challenges. Remember yesterday when we came here, we highlighted a few of the challenges that we saw here. One was the power supply to this facility here. They actually ran on alternative power supply, and at certain point you find the place or the system get overheated and a lot more. These were some of the technical issues that we observed yesterday. But yet a lot of people still preferred coming here because they had less chance of getting exploited, unlike when they go to local council development areas where some tout would come and ask them pay 5,000 naira or more to be registered. Well, another concern for some of these people here is the fact that not everyone here has come to register anew. There are a few of them, or most of them, have actually come to correct one information on their data or the other. I saw someone who said for 4 years he's been trying to correct the month of his birth. And you know what that means? For 4 years he's been trying to. That means there's not been updates on the data submitted since that time. And right now he's expected to pay the 15,000 naira fee to get that corrected. And he's saying it's no fault of mine that at the bank where I did my BVN, my date of birth is correct. How come it is not correct here? Instead of February, you are giving me May. Just correct it. Why are you asking me to pay for this? But then we still have a few persons here. Raji is one of them. Raji would want to express his reservations about what is happening here. Raji, quickly tell me, give us an idea of what you have passed through.
Thank you. When I approached these people about to register to enroll, I gave them my information. I was in the process of, registration, and they now called my attention to my date of birth. And when I look at it, this is not my date of birth. And they have to tell me that this is what they have. I said, you can't have this one. For the past 4 years, I've been dealing with banks, and they give me a correct date. If I go to any bank for the past 4 years, I've been given the correct something. So how will you have this? Even after you collect, you are not the one that registered us for the BVN, it's this bank. So if you happen to collect the data from them, is there no way you people don't update? If anything like enrollment or registration, at least there must bound to be a mistake. And if it has been corrected, how will you get it? You are holding on to almost 6 years data, and you call it it's not acceptable. How will you hold on to data without update? And secondly, apart that, I was told to pay 15,000 naira or with charges or whatever, I'm making 15,000 like 500. I wonder, looking at it, how will I pay this? Is it not extortion? If I can get this something right with the bank that enroll me for the BVN, you are not the one that enroll me for the BVN. If any correction has to be made, not from you, it has to be with the bank. And if you want to do you that collected bank, you want to make it a valid one, you have to be updating. That means you will not be updated for the how many years? 5 back years.
All right, Raji, thank you so very much for that. And remember, we said yesterday that, the official told us yesterday that about 203 licensed agents would be joining in the process so as to make it seamless and to ease the stress on Nigerians. We hope that still kicks in, especially in the face of the strike that they just embarked on. Well, there will be a meeting later in the day, as I learned, and of course they would be issuing probably a communique to that effect. We'll still be here, and of course give you updates from time to time. But for now, let's come back to the studios.
Brilliant, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting. So there you go. It's official. Unfortunately, for those who are waiting and still waiting, NIMC officials are on strike. Well, we have some response coming through from you. We'll start with this one from, I'm trying to see the name now, Nakrisalane. Whoa. Okay, I hope I got that right. Pardon me if I didn't. You're talking about the NIN registration. While I agree with you that much needs to be done in areas of sensitization/public awareness, there is nowhere in the world where services are completely and continuously free. Corrections on driver's license, international passport is not free. NIMC should not be any different.
Well, Shegun Olushola says, why can't NIMC maximize the digital space, reprogram their website to allow Nigerians to upload their basic data and only go for picture capturing? Booking can also be done digitally. COVID-19 is real.
Okay.
Samuel says on COVID-19 vaccine, why do we want vaccines that haven't been verified with respect to adverse effect? It is said that they're still studying the COVID-19 virus. So how come we're willing to get vaccines for something under study? So are we willing to gamble with people's lives? Some questions he has there.
Yeah. Well, Henry, talking about tackling the second wave in Nigeria, treat my symptomatic illness that manifests with confusion over WHO is leading or coordinating the research arm of the national COVID-19 response now. Oh, okay, over who is leading or coordinating. There you go. It says, look, where is the Federal Ministry of Health? Seeing what multiplicity of institutions and duplicity of functions have done to Nigeria?
Victor says, this COVID fight is our fight. Our health workers must be taken care of. We cannot have senators getting wardrobe allowance while those in the front fighting don't have simple PPEs. Things have to change, really.
And there's this very lengthy one now from Tolu. He says it is preposterous that after days of lifting the ban on SIM card replacement and the need for customers to comply with a set of new requirements put in place by the Technical Working Committee, I have been repeatedly told I cannot replace my Glow line stolen since January 1. Reason, NCC has not been given directives or has not given directives. This is utterly ridiculous and makes the whole system laughable. I hope NCC and Glow will urgently put their house in order and restore my means of communication, as I know the federal government since lifted the ban via a statement signed by one Dr. Adinde, who is the Director of Public Affairs at NCC. The only condition is to have enrolled and obtained a NIN. I trust the NCC, NIMC, and telcos will work with some cohesion and reissue SIM cards, albeit upon fulfillment of those conditions. That's from Tolu Adiremi.
Well, I'm going to end with this one, pardon me, but it's sent anonymously from a NIN agent in a registration center who says, good morning, guys. Agents have been signed on to help speed up the process of registration, and the government pays them 350 naira. However, from behind, government officials, in parentheses, in the guise of super agents, also in parentheses, deduct 110 naira from these fees, which reduces the net to the agent to 250 naira, making them prone to extort the public. This is another case of corruption bedeviling the public service. And he also says, look, it goes on and says some of the things that really need to be investigated. So those are the responses coming through from people. We do thank you for all of them. We'll see you again next time. I'm Chamberlain also.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and please keep safe.
And it's good to be back. Good to see you again. Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yosef.